Thank you very much, everyone, and I appreciate you being here because I know coffee is coming up next. So the room's a bit quieter, people have already gone, but hopefully you'll get some value from this. So, as it says, I am the VP Revenue Operations and Enablement, and today we're going to talk about the key considerations for building an enablement program, hopefully to enable everyone to be more successful in what they do. But before I start, I really wanted to just give a bit of an intro, excuse me, tell you who I am, why I'm doing this, and my background. So a bit about me. So, I'm showing my age now, which is really embarrassing. I should have thought about that before I put the dates on there. So please don't work it out. I spent 10 years as a salesperson. I did everything from being a BDR, SDR, whatever you want to call it, to an AE, through to a CSM and an AM. Did a short stint as a sales manager. Won't go into why, didn't enjoy it. Again, something embarrassing about me, to show my age even more. I was talking to some BDRs the other day, and I was talking about when I started selling. I was cold calling from the yellow pages. Yeah, I was stood in an office in London, and I wasn't even allowed a chair until I'd done my first quote of the day, because you project your voice better stood up. I'm not quite sure that's the enablement or the approach we want to go with, but it was even more embarrassing when they hadn't even heard of the yellow pages, and there was me selling from it. Anyway, I moved into product marketing, ran a team across parts of Europe, and then I joined the world of ops and enablement, and I've been there for almost 9 years now. Absolutely love it. Wouldn't go back, like we've heard about today. Nobody really wakes up thinking, I want to do this. I just ended up there, and I'm so glad that I have, and I wouldn't change it. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about the key considerations for building an enablement program. The stuff that I think about before we start. And the reason I think about this is I've learned the hard way. And I still do, right? We're all human, we make mistakes. And I've made so many mistakes along these 9 years because nobody told me how to do it. I've just sort of figured it out. So I want to try and share with you today those mistakes so that hopefully people can try and avoid them in the future. So, but before I did, I think the very first session of the day, someone spoke about what enablement is, and there's so many definitions. And we just heard a minute ago, you ask 5 people, you're going to get 6 different answers of what enablement is. So I am going to start with what it means to me, so hopefully you understand that it gives some more context to sort of my session. So, for me, enablement is this linchpin. It's between the sort of the strategy and the execution of that. And it's this function that exists to try and make all go-to-market teams as successful as possible. And honestly, I don't really care whether it's sales enablement, revenue enablement, commercial enablement. I've had all of those titles. Essentially, I've done the same thing in every single one of them. And that's focused on trying to help people be as successful as they can be. And yes, you may over-index on the sales team or the customer success team. But ultimately, we're there to make sure the business can go to market in the most successful way and essentially help our customers. We do this at the moment in these sort of 4 pillars. So the onboarding, the ongoing, the career development, and the communication. And in every single one of those pillars, we cover whether it's tools, skills, processes, methodologies. It doesn't really matter. That's what we do. That's how we try to bring it to life. And then before I dive into what the considerations are, I'm just going to actually tell you what I perceive to be an enablement program, because that would probably help. So for me, it's taking everything that the function does, and it is this deliberate process of essentially giving people the information, like it says here, whether it's the tools, the guidance, whatever it needs to be, so they can do their job as effective as they can be. So, let me dive into the considerations, and there are so many. Yeah, I could have put like 25 different things up here that you should probably think about before starting a program. But I've sort of put the 6 that are probably the most important to me. And I will dive into all of them as we go through this. But ultimately, hopefully they make sense. Start with why. Be data-led. Have a clear goal. What are you trying to achieve? What is that outcome? Consider learning styles. And I kind of feel stupid for even saying this, but remember the forgetting curve. Right? But it's really, really important. And then manage your stakeholders. So, let's dive into these. Start with why. I suppose the question is, why start with why? And I had a bit of an argument with my other half about this one last night when I was running for it, because she has a completely different opinion to me, but she's not in enablement, so I win. And people today have already spoken about this, and they've spoken about change, and they've spoken about change management. So I'm really pleased about that, because it does mean I definitely win, and I will go home and tell her that I wasn't the only one to speak about that today. But the reason I start with why is because so much of enablement is about change. Whether it is changing a behavior, changing a pitch, using a new tool, whatever it is, if you understand the why, changing is so much easier. I'm sure you've all read the book or seen the book from Simon Sinek. Maybe seen that TED Talk where they talk about apples, why they start with why. Ultimately, when you're changing a behavior, there's two ways to do it: manipulation or inspiration. Manipulation or inspiration. Quite frankly, I know which one I would prefer. Sorry to say, I've actually done both. And Dan is from my team there. And we almost did manipulation a few months ago, right? We were launching some new enablement. We were doing so much of it, like probably too much. And people weren't doing what we needed. We were in that issue that someone spoke about earlier where we had a deadline of everyone needs to have done this certification by this date. And I was sick and tired of chasing people. So we spoke about, do we need to pay them? Do we incentivize them? Do we create a competition to do their enablement? And the answer was no, but we thought about it. And that's manipulation. We're getting them to do so. We're not taking them on that journey. We're not telling them the why. We're not trying to bring them with us. Because manipulation only works for a certain point. And as soon as I stop paying them, they'll stop doing it. And then it's pointless. I shouldn't have bothered in the first place. So you need to go down the inspiration route. Tell them the why. Bring them on that big journey. Tell them what the bigger picture is. Because change is difficult. Change is uncomfortable. But if they understand why, it makes it easier for them. They've got to step out of their comfort zone. And by understanding the why, the quicker their comfort zone will catch up to where they are, and that will be their new norm. So for me, you have to start with why. If you can't start with why, if you're not starting with why, you're probably not going to be very successful with that program. The second is about being data-led. Now, you saw a minute ago in my background, like I got my first job in Ops and Enablement 9 years ago. I'd never been an IC in the function. I was really fortunate to walk into a management position, and I had a team, 5 or 6, what they were called enablement specialists. They were trainers, but they were called enablement specialists. And they were amazing, some of the best I've worked with. And they could train you on anything, do the most amazing onboarding, to the point our competitor used to try and hire our new starts after 6 months because they knew they didn't need to then do onboarding because we've just done it for them. So they were amazing, but they weren't data-led. They did things because they thought they should do it. They did things because someone in leadership said, hey, you need to do this. Or because a supplier or a vendor or a partner said, hey, can you do this enablement? There's a free bottle in it, or there's a bag, or you get a night out. And it was all really good stuff, and some of it may have been perfect and just what we needed. But a bunch of it probably wasn't, because they were doing what they thought was right, not what they knew was right. And we spoke earlier, someone mentioned about how lean teams are. And you said a minute ago about being a cost center, and lots of businesses still don't understand. If we can't articulate ourselves what enablement is, how's a business going to understand? So therefore, you are viewed as a cost center. Therefore, people don't want to invest in you, so you have lean teams. See, therefore, you can't afford to waste time where you think you should be. You have to be where you know you need to be. So for me, you have to have this pinpoint accuracy. You have to deploy your resource exactly where you need to be. You cannot afford to be anywhere else. And then the second point here, focus your learners where they must be. We've all been there. We've all been enabled at some point. We've all been sat in a training session, being told what to do. If that first time it doesn't go very well, you're less likely going to buy it next time. You may have the most amazing fun session, but if you walk out there and you're not going to do anything differently as a result, what was the point? Yeah, cool, you had a great afternoon. You spent an hour in this really interactive session. But what are you going to do? How's it going to make you be different? How's it going to make you be better? So for me, be data-led. Use the data to tell you where you need to be. Use the data to dictate what you need to train, what you need to enable. Use that data to make sure that you're making the most of every single moment you have. Then the third one, have a clear goal. Again, spoken about a little while ago, have this clear goal. You're going to get a clear goal by utilizing data. But why would you do anything if you didn't know where you're trying to get to? Everything in life is so much easier if you know what you're trying to do. You know, even with walking, if I want to go from A to B, if I've got to walk across some really horrible ground, some broken glass, whatever, if I know where I'm trying to get to, know what I'm trying to do, it becomes easier. Why am I going to walk on glass just for the sake of it? I'm only going to walk on glass if I need to get over there for this most compelling reason. So have a clear goal. Goals are important, right? But you have to be really clear about what is important. I used to think this was the most important goal. I used to love to turn around and say, oh my God, we've just certified X amount of people. Well, did you know 90% of people turned up for my enablement session? We did it earlier this year. We literally, I remember telling our CEO, my God, we've just enabled, or we've had 30 new people certifying our new pitch program. The program was amazing. Dan did a great job. So what? Like, what's it doing? What's the big thing that's happening as a result? Yes, I want people to tell me they enjoyed it. Well, why does the CEO care? Yeah, he does because he cares about his people. But I'm still a cost center. What am I going to do? How am I going to add value? I add value by telling this story. Do you know what? That program we did took our win rate from 30 to 35% in 6 months. Or that program, do you know what? 100% of all of our pitches in the last 6 months used our new pitch deck, and that increased our stage conversion rate. Did you know that we reduced churn as a direct result of that program we did? That's the stuff that adds value. That's when you stop being a cost center, because you know what? I can now demonstrate, I can monetize. I can say, this is what we do. This is who we are. I don't get a pat on the back. I don't have people telling me, oh, that was great fun. But I can then turn around and say, I generated X amount of revenue. Do you know what? As a result of what we did and making people more efficient, you didn't have to hire 4 new AEs this year. Or if you want to hire those 4 new AEs, it's just net new revenue on top. That's what we should be doing. So if you start with the why, you then use data to work out what you need to do. Make sure you're in the right place. Have a clear goal. You should have the pretty good foundation for an enablement program. Then, you need to think about the learning styles. And I regret Googling this, because you know, there are so many different opinions, whether it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Everywhere you go, there's a different version. So I stuck with 4 because it was easier to remember for today. But no, honestly, for me, these are the 4 that are the really important ones. You either learn by looking, by watching, by listening, by doing, or by reading and writing. What's important about this, though, is that this isn't how you learn. This is how you prefer to learn. It's a preference. My preference is to be a kinesthetic learner. I like to learn by doing stuff. Give me a system. Give me a tool. Let me play around and figure it out. I was chatting to a partner earlier from Seismic. We onboarded Seismic a while back. And you know, we went through this amazing onboarding, really detailed. And I walked away and I wasn't quite sure. And then I sat down and we played around with it. I was like, oh my God, this is so simple. This is so easy. And it wasn't because the enablement was bad. It was because it didn't suit my preference. My preference is just let me get on and do it. Let me play around with it. But it doesn't mean I can't learn by listening or by seeing or by reading and writing. It just means that I prefer to learn by doing. So you need to take this into consideration, because even if you had a whole room of auditory people, kinesthetic people, if I had a whole room of auditory people and I got in a room and I just stood up and spoke at you for an hour, quite frankly, you're still going to be bored. You're not going to absorb it all. It's just not going to sink in, because it's about variety. It's about understanding this is your preference, but there are other ways you can learn. And you need to think about this up front with your enablement program. Think about how you're going to bring your program to life. How are you going to give everybody the best opportunity to digest your information, learn your information, and then see a positive result as at the sort of back of it. And you're only going to do that by taking all of this into consideration. Because, yeah, you've got person 1 on the left. They learn by seeing, by listening, but they still have these other preferences. Person 2 on the right, doing, reading and writing, but they can still learn by seeing and listening. So make sure you consider every single type, and make sure you have a blend with your program. Make sure that you give everybody the best opportunity to absorb this information. So, again, this is the one I said I felt stupid about earlier. you definitely have to remember the forgetting curve, right? The forgetting curve, the original data has been around since about 1880. I used to take it personally. And I've had so many conversations with people. You've done enablement, and then they forget. That's just natural. People do that. Like, again, we did some small changes to Salesforce 6 months ago. Ran an enablement session on a Thursday. Friday, a particular BDR went in and did exactly what we told them not to do. Because it wasn't the enablement was bad. It wasn't they were bad. It's just human nature that you forget stuff. So take that into consideration. Don't be offended. And again, like I said earlier, we did this massive enablement around our pitch. And people forgot stuff. And they forgot stuff because we didn't take that into consideration. It doesn't matter how good your enablement is, people are going to forget. So that's why the forgetting curve is really important. Because after 7 days, you've remembered about 10%. Tell them again, and they remember a little bit more. Then again, and they remember more. Then again. Doesn't mean I'm going to stand here and tell you the same thing 4 times, because quite frankly, you're just not remembering and be booed off the stage. But think about your learning styles. Think about the forgetting curve. Try and piece it all together. Tell the story. Tell them how to do this. So for me, first, day 1, maybe be your initial enablement session. It may be in a classroom. It may be on Zoom. Then the next day, you've got your LMS system issuing a follow-up. There's a little short quiz. There's a video in there. There's a knowledge check at the end of it. Then a couple of days later, maybe you send a video message out. And that video message may just contain some of your takeaways, some of your thoughts. Maybe it's from a subject matter expert. Maybe there's a challenge to all of your other learners so that they then start to share their videos. What are they doing differently? What's their story? Because then you've got that information coming out. It's not just about telling it 4 times. And then a couple of days later, maybe send an email out. I'm giving you 4 different styles of learning there. I'm telling you the key takeaways, the messages, what's really important 4 times. I'm giving you the best opportunity to remember what you're being told. That's going to give you the best opportunity of being successful as a result. And that's going to give my enablement program the best opportunity of being successful. Then finally, for me, number 6, manage your stakeholders. And manage is a really, really strong word. But for me, you need to bring everyone on this journey, right? I'm really fortunate. I have this VP job title. Can I make an executive decision? Yes. Could I just say, no, we're doing it? Yes. Have I done that? Yes. Was it a mistake? Yes. Don't do it. You could do, and sometimes you have to make a decision. But it's so much better to bring people on a journey with you. So like I said, you could do it on your own. You could make this executive decision, but you shouldn't. It is a team game, right? Something that you quite often see, and when you don't do this, you see it in the results, right? And that's even if you're measuring your results. Say we're doing something around win rate or sending content, whatever that may be. You run an enablement program. You may see a little spike in your chart. Your win rate might have gone up by 5% because people are doing something different. But even if I told them 4 times, the likelihood is they're still going to forget it. They're going to revert back to what they've been doing for the last 12, 18, 24 months. So what you need to do is make sure this becomes their new norm. And the only way this becomes their new norm is to embed it in their everyday life. As we've said, enablement teams are lean. In the new economic climate, they're probably going to become leaner. So you can't just be doing this yourself. I can't just say, hey, we've got 100 salespeople. Every single one of them, I'm going to talk to every day about this new process to make sure it becomes their new norm. I need to rely on who they engage with all their time. That's their manager. That's product marketing. That's marketing. It doesn't matter who it is. Everyone around the business needs to be talking about this. If you're bringing in MedPick, you've got your new methodology. If all I do is train A's on MedPick, great. A's might know it, they might remember it. But if I train BDRs on it as well, and then BDRs and A's are working together, and then I train sales engineers on it, and partnerships, and marketing, and even our CEO, because they're all talking about a champion, they're all talking about an economic buyer, it becomes their everyday. It becomes their new norm. And essentially what you end up with is that long tail of success. So instead of just seeing a spike in your win rate or your content center, whatever it may be, it spikes and then it plateaus. And that's normal and that's fine. But then what we're going to do is we're going to come in with another program later on, and we're going to try and lift that bar every single time. But you're lifting it from a higher position. What you don't want it to do is spike and then drop, because you've even got to lift it further. So think about how you can bring everybody on this journey. Work with the sales managers. It is a team sport. We can't do it on our own. As much as you think you may be the best, you may be amazing, you're never going to be as successful doing it on your own as you will be bringing the whole business with you. So for me, just to sum up before I turn over to any questions, there are these 6 considerations. Start with why. Like I said, change is uncomfortable. Make it easy for people. Bring them on the journey. Be data-led. Don't waste your time doing what you think you should be doing. Don't waste your time doing what you like to do, because it's really easy to revert to the subject that you're best at or the subject you like talking about. Go where you know 100% you need to be. Have a clear goal. And that clear goal, in my opinion, should have an X and a Y and a time frame. That's the easiest way to monetize this. That's the easiest way to demonstrate your value. Consider the learning styles. Make sure you give everyone in the room, the best opportunity to absorb the information. Take into consideration that they like to read, they like to write, they like to listen, they like to do stuff. Consider it all. And then remember that forgetting curve. Just because people forget doesn't mean your enablement was bad. Give people the opportunity, the best chance possible to remember everything. Remember, tell them again and tell them a different way. Have a plan and build this in up front. Don't all of a sudden, wow, that's it, enablement's done. Oh shit, we've got to tell people again. What do we do now? Have that in your plan. Know what you're going to do. And then manage your stakeholders. Bring everyone on the journey. Leverage the people you need. We've all been there. We've all said, hey, like sales managers, tomorrow I'm doing this training session. I really need your help. And they're like, what? No, you're not. I don't agree with that. And you're like, well, what do I do? Do I just do it anyway and hope they like it? Do I put it and I waste the effort? Get them involved. Bring them on that journey. Do it together. But underpinning all of this, for me, is don't aim for perfection, right? You need to be great. But aiming for perfection takes so long, and you're never going to get to perfection. Take as much time as you can and take as much time as you need. But don't aim for perfection. But don't rush it. You only get this one opportunity to have the greatest impact. Enablement is tough enough as it is. If we do a session and it's rubbish, and then next time only half the people turn up, well, even if they all love it the next time round because I learned from my mistakes, I'm only going to get half the people on board. Only half the people are going to do it. Therefore, my results are 50%, best case scenario. So take your time. Take into consideration everything that you need to. Like I said, they're my 6. There's many others you should think about. But they're the 6 that, for me, if I take all of these into consideration, I give myself the right amount of time to deliver a program, I'm going to set myself up with the best chance for success. So that's it for me. Are there any questions?
We have some questions. Great. We have some questions on Slido. Sure, true by voice. So, what qualities make a good enablement team hire? So that gets the award for the most open question of the day, I think. That one.
Look, as I said, I manage ops and enablement, and I would love to say that you only have enablement doing enablement. Everyone does it, right? And everyone that does enablement does other stuff as well. But for me, the one thing I always look for is curiosity. I just think, and this comes down to whether it's reactive or proactive enablement. Reactive enablement doesn't mean it's bad, but people are asking you to do something. I think having curiosity leads to more proactive enablement, where you go digging, you use that data, you find stuff, you suggest stuff yourself. So I think curiosity is absolutely essential. And then the normal stuff like we spoke about, project management, confidence, presenting, writing content, all of that, because we don't live in a world, or I certainly don't in scale-ups, live in a world where I have 1 million people doing it. That enablement specialist needs to be able to write content. They need to be able to present. They need to be able to build and manage an LMS. They need to be able to use data. So for me, all of those are fundamentals, but the most important and I would probably describe it as an attribute rather than some skill or knowledge, is curiosity.
If we let's go for the top one. How do you manage stakeholders when everyone has competing priorities?
With difficulty. Look, so it has to align back to the company goals. So at Emetria, we used to have OKRs, we got rid of OKRs. I don't know if anyone's heard of the 4 disciplines of execution. So 4DX, the principles of 4DX is that you have one WIG, a wildly important goal. So we have one company WIG, and then we have functions, and everyone's WIG has to directly roll up and impact that overarching WIG. And I remember when I joined Emetria and I said to Ivan, our CEO, it's like, how do you be successful at Emetria? How do you do this? And he said, if you ever don't know what to do, think about the WIG. And I always come back to that, because if the WIG is right, which you would hope it is, then actually managing stakeholders becomes so much easier because you're all aligned behind the same goal. If you can demonstrate, because you're using data, right, because you've got a clear goal, you know what your outcome is, you know what the impact it's going to have, then you should be able to demonstrate how that's going to help them hit their WIG. So for me, it's about the cross-functional alignment, everyone in the business rolling up to the same objective, and that makes managing stakeholders 10 times easier.
Let's try and combine 2 questions at one. It went so well earlier. What's the hardest part of implementing a new enablement function in a business that hasn't had one before? And how do you build your overall enablement strategy? That went a bit better.
So the hardest part of implementing a new enablement function is educating people as to what it is. There was a session earlier, I can't remember which one, so I do apologize, and Dan and I were laughing because so many people just try and dump everything on enablement. Oh, coaching. Oh, performance management. I screwed up and did this. Oh, can you help me? It's like, no. So for me, it's about being really, really clear. What is enablement? What is enablement? It comes back to that project. It comes back to that charter. It comes back to a clear definition of who you are, what's in scope, and what's out of scope. I think by having that and communicating it, don't communicate it once, twice, 3, 4 times, over-communicate it and continuously update it. You write your charter. It's not, I've written it, off it goes, it's done now. It's a live document. And as the company evolves, that needs to evolve. And you just need to make sure that that's clear so that everybody understands what's in scope, what's out of scope. Once they understand that, and then you demonstrate the value for your measurement and having your goals, it makes it much easier to implement a enablement function in an organization that hasn't had it. And then building out an overall enablement strategy. This one's kind of simple, right? It just comes back to the company strategy. Understand what the company strategy is. Use data to understand where there's gaps and how you can help that. And then you build your enablement strategy directly around that. So as long as there's really, really clear articulation around what the company is trying to do, and then you understand where you are, you can work out what you're going to do to piece that gap. And that's where your enablement strategy comes from.
I'll pick one more because we've got time for one more. So I would say whoever is anonymous, but you're all anonymous. So what if you're in a startup where data is scarce and can't get to the exact X plus Y plus time frame description of your goal?
I suppose you can only do what you can do. Data doesn't exist, data doesn't exist. You can't make it up. So find the best data that you can. Find what information is available. I've spent most of my career, for example, when I joined Xero, we didn't even have a CRM system. We were 88 employees in the UK, and we lived off a Google Sheet, and then some developer in the business said, I'll build you a CRM system. So our data was shocking, because that only lasted 3 months before we built another one, before we bought Salesforce. So use what you can. The same as Carlos and Emetria, other companies, they were all small, like Series B, small Series C companies. We didn't have loads of data. But there will be data, right? You don't get to a Series B, Series C company and then have an enablement function without having some data. You've sold some stuff, you've got some funding, you've proved what you can do as a business, so therefore some data will exist. Use what you can and make sure whatever processes you're designing are going to capture more and more data to enable you to move exactly to that, to an X plus Y plus time frame.